House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has decided that she's going to back incumbents no matter if they're under FBI investigation or not. She's going to back Representative Henry Cuellar's reelection bid. Yes, he's under FBI investigation, and he also has a bunch of terrible policy positions, including being an anti-choice Democrat during this time. And he's headed to a runoff with Justice Democrat progressive Jessica Cisneros. But Pelosi said to the Texas Tribune, "I support my incumbents. I support every one of them from right to left. That is what I do." Maybe that policy should probably be a bit reconsidered when said incumbent is under FBI investigation, let alone the fact that he holds numerous odious policy positions. Cuellar, who has represented Texas's 28th district for almost 2 decades, made headlines when the FBI raided his home and campaign headquarters on January 19th. The congressman has maintained his innocence and vowed to remain in the race, but has not specified why he is under investigation. Pelosi says that she knows nothing about it. "I don't know what it is," after a reporter asked her about the probe. "I haven't seen anything. Have you?" Pelosi said. "Do you know what it's about?" "I don't know, I read the news, Nancy." And his home was raided by the FBI. That seems pertinent. That happened a little bit earlier this year due to his potentially shady ties to Azerbaijan and money maybe coming out of there. The raid was a part of a federal grand jury probe. Subpoenas reviewed from the probe by ABC News reportedly sought records from a number of organizations with ties to Azerbaijan, in addition to 3 Texas-based companies with ties to Cuellar's wife, Imelda. So there's a bunch of potential human rights violations there. But Cenk, I wanted to see if you want to weigh in before we get into a few more of the details.
So question is Nancy Pelosi backing Cuellar because she's clueless or corrupt? As you can guess, trick question, both. So first of all, she says, "I'm proudly endorsing Cuellar." They say, "What about the FBI investigation?" She's like, "What is it?" Wait, if you know there's an FBI investigation, but you don't know what it is, why'd you endorse him? Shouldn't you at least know what it's about? You don't know that it might involve Azerbaijani oligarchs. You don't know that it's about corruption. You don't know anything about it, but you decided, I'll just endorse him anyway. Now, Republicans are making a real run at this district. This is not a heavily blue district. So the Democrats could lose it if they have, for example, a candidate up on FBI charges of corruption. And so Democratic leadership always tells us, "Oh no, we hate the." I mean, we don't hate the progressives. We just have to use all of our money against them instead of Republicans because they just can't win, and we need Democratic candidates that can win. Oh, Cuellar will have a massive liability in the general election and likely hand the seat to a Republican. Who cares? He's conservative like I am, Nancy Pelosi thinks, and he's corrupt like I am. So what's the issue of corruption? Well, Nancy Pelosi is a conservative Democrat because she's taken $1 billion in campaign donations. Now, there's another word for that. We used to call those bribes, but now mainstream media doing marketing for corporate rule says, no. When a corporation gives millions of dollars to Nancy Pelosi, it doesn't corrupt her, she's an angel. And it's not a bribe, it's a campaign donation. So that's why she backs conservatives like Cuellar, and of course, she's also lying when she says, "Oh no, I just back incumbents no matter what." Do you? Because I distinctly remember you endorsing Joe Kennedy against the incumbent Democrat Ed Markey in the Senate because Ed Markey's a progressive. So, and Jessica, part of the problem here is that the press enables her. So if there was somebody in the room that said, "Wait, that's not true. You backed Markey, you backed Kennedy against Markey. You didn't seem to have any ostensible support for Rashida Tlaib and AOC when they were primaried. You always rally both rhetorically and financially to the side of conservative Democrats." But no, the press says, "Oh, of course, yes, madam. Of course, madam. You are a master legislator, madam."
Yes, one of many of Pelosi's contradictions. I remember back to the 2020 primary when she was asked about Warren and Bernie's stances on Medicare for all. She said, "I usually cast my vote for a woman, I just do." And here she is supporting a man in her race where he's running against a woman. Not only that, but the only Democrat who voted against protecting women's right to choose.
No, by the way, that's such a great point by Jessica. Cuellar has so many problems. He was already one of the most conservative. He was already one of the most corrupt in terms of campaign donations directly from corporations, etc., out of any member of Congress. On top of that, he's such a, that's why Pelosi sees him and think, birds of a feather flock together, right? So she's like, oh, he was also incompetent in that he took illegal bribe money? Wow, that's pretty good. I really like that guy, right? But if you put aside all of those massive issues, mountains of issues against Cuellar, he's against the right to choose in the state of Texas. So he's agreeing with the Texas Republicans as they encourage vigilantes against women who just want to have the right to control their own bodies. You got a Democrat betraying us on that issue and saying women should be chattel, and Pelosi backs him. Anyone who claims that Pelosi isn't a conservative Democrat is actively lying to you.
Right, and look at the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats here. Trump is like basically excommunicating any Republican that dared to say, okay, maybe the election wasn't stolen, or maybe we should move past it. I mean, the other day he said he rescinded his endorsement of Mo Brooks for that very reason. Like, say what you want, but Trump is trying to discipline the members of his party and making sure that they fall under his very specific line of I am the kingmaker. But Nancy Pelosi, I support incumbents for the sake of incumbents, regardless if they might lose in the general election in the seat that should be the Democrats, even though yes, it makes it more vulnerable if Cuellar is the nominee. I just support my incumbents. I support my incumbents. And that means that the party really has very little internal discipline from a policy perspective and from a messaging perspective. And also the hypocrisy of it too. Let's get into what some of the accusations against him are in terms of corruption. Because I thought that Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democratic Party were so concerned about foreign interference in elections and foreign governments controlling certain politicians, namely Trump, when it came to Russia. Perhaps they should be concerned about these donations to Cuellar. So Cuellar and his wife Imelda traveled to Azerbaijan at the cost of nearly $25,000. The trip was paid for by the Turquoise Council of Americans and Eurasians, a Texas-based nonprofit. For the next several years, Cuellar frequently collaborated with Kemal Oksus, the leader of the nonprofit. A few months later, a Cuellar staffer took an additional trip to Azerbaijan that also included US Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Houston and 9 other members. The trip was approved by the Congressional Ethics Office, but the Washington Post later reported that the Azerbaijani government state oil company secretly funded the junket. Jackson Lee and other members who went on that trip publicly stated at the time that they were misled and that the House Ethics Committee signed off on the trip. Oksus was later charged with covering up the source of the funding. He pleaded guilty to the charges in 2018, according to the US Department of Justice. SOCAR, which is where the money for the trip was actually wired, is the largest company and source of tax revenue in Azerbaijan. The company has embarked on ambitious plans to build a network of pipelines that stretch through multiple countries to deliver gas into Europe. The so-called Southern Gas Corridor built by SOCAR in partnership with BP and other Western energy giants required an investment of over $45 billion. So Cuellar didn't personally go on this trip, but one of his staffers did and other House members did. And then pair that with the rest of the connections, you get a clearer picture. So not only is Pelosi backing a vulnerable incumbent who is under investigation, who is anti-choice, who is also has questionable ties to foreign oil and gas, which we're supposed to be the party, the Democrats are supposed to be the party that's transitioning away from oil and gas. Laughable, I know, with Joe Manchin leading the anti-climate change acceptance wing of the Democratic Party. But part of this too is the institutional corruption that Cenk was mentioning. Cuellar has been in this seat for a long time, and he and his family have connections to the local party there. So the fish rots from the head down, and Pelosi is responsible for this in many different ways.
Yeah, no, they hate progressives way more than they hate Republicans because they've been playing this game of good cop, bad cop with Republicans for a long, long time. Nancy Pelosi is familiar with that game and really likes that game. But progressives actually challenge their own power. So Pelosi does not like that. So she'd much rather have a corrupt Cuellar who's against women's rights than an honest Jessica Cisneros who doesn't take corporate PAC money like Nancy Pelosi does. By the way, it's not like the other Democrat in the race doesn't have a chance. They pretty much tied. They already had a primary. They pretty much tied. They were so close they have to go to a runoff. So Jessica Cisneros is just as viable at a bare minimum without an FBI investigation as Cuellar is for the general election. And obviously with the FBI investigation, that makes Cisneros far more viable. But Pelosi doesn't actually care about Democrats holding power. She just wants to make sure she holds power and progressives challenge her power within the party. And that's how this game is played. By the way, since Jessica Cisneros does not take corrupt money like Cuellar does, she needs grassroots support. Her website is jessicacisnerosforcongress.com. And we'll put the link down below, jessicacisnerosforcongress.com. It's in the description box if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook. Make sure you participate in our democracy and get out these corrupt clowns.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that Pelosi's actions are not those of the leader of a party. Even if you're not a progressive and you want Democrats to keep their majority, you've got Nancy Pelosi picking candidates that probably won't win, that have a lot of controversy surrounding their seats. The smart thing to do would be to have him politely bow out and back another candidate, but she refuses to do that.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.